Hi, it's Ray Grant. It's uh once again it is Sunday, November 19th. It is 9:08 p.m. Here in Pittsburgh, and I decided to keep going today because my original intent when I was doing the earlier video was that I was going to do a relatively short introduction into the 223 motif, and then I was going to talk about the Riverside literature, and the I got so caught up in the ideas behind the 223 and everything else I talked about this morning that I didn't quite get to the Riverside stuff, so I thought I would do that this evening. And I do have this fear that my voice is going to completely disappear. It's scheduled to disappear at least by Thanksgiving or so, and I can't get my doctor's very busy, so I can't get my throat injections till December 7th, and it will probably be at least a week or so after that until I can, speak well enough to do a video. So I thought I would pack as many videos in as I can, and I won't be able to do any tomorrow morning because I have to go out to the airport again. So I thought I would do it this evening. I am wearing for those of you who care, I'm wearing my Google shirt. I got a Google shirt because I was the mailman at Pittsburgh's Google office back in 2009 in the CIC building on the Carnegie Mellon campus. And the great thing about these shirts is you can't buy them. Google has to give you one of these shirts. And there are different shirts for each city where Google has an office. This is the Pittsburgh shirt. So what this features it's Google. It features the combination of the 6th Street Bridge downtown, which is a famous bridge in Pittsburgh, and the infinity sign. And supposedly, Google has, for example, they have an office in Boston, and where the two O's are, they have like two lobster claws. And they have an office in Atlanta, and where the two O's are, they have, I think, two peaches. And I forget what. There's also a Chicago shirt. I forget what's on the Chicago shirt, but there's a different shirt for each city, a different design for each city, and supposedly the Pittsburgh shirt is the cool shirt, okay, to get. But you only get these if you're invited, if you're, let's say, an engineer and you're invited to Google for an interview, and they'll give you one of these shirts. And I was fortunate that the receptionist at the Google office was a very nice lady, and she gave me a shirt. So I have one, and our truck driver at the time also has a shirt. So I mean, this is my favorite shirt. These are cool shirts. And as I said, you can't buy them. So it's just one of the perks of being a mailman. Anyway, I wanted to talk about Riverside. The original intent was to talk about the 223 motif and to kind of segue into the Riverside communications. And I sort of got carried away with the 223 stuff this morning, as I just said, and so I thought I would do like the significance of the Riverside letters and the desk poem this evening. So that's what I'm going to do. Before I touch on any of that, I wanted to talk about this idea that some people have. There are certain myths that have, as I've mentioned earlier, there are certain myths that have appeared in the Zodiac online community and literature and TV shows and everything else that cannot be done away with. Okay, and I've mentioned a couple of them before this, and one of those is this idea that I'm saying that that the Riverside murder was a Zodiac murder. Now, there are people who deny that the Zodiac killer had anything whatsoever to do with Riverside, and there are people who believe that the Zodiac killer did not kill Sherry Bates, but he did write the messages. He wrote the confession letter, and there are people who believe that he didn't write the confession letter, but he wrote the death poem and the loose leaf letters. Okay, and none of that makes any sense, frankly. But why people believe that, I don't know. But again, you're dealing with Zodiac hobbyists. You're dealing with discussions on Zodiac killer message boards where cows fly backwards upside down. And so, I mean, it's just this bizarro world where almost anything can be imagined by people. But if you stop to think about it, what had happened in Riverside, as far as anyone could tell, what had happened on October 30th, 1966, was a co-ed murder. Okay, and if you believe that the Zodiac killer then decided to write letters to the police claiming that murder, I don't see where that makes any sense. Why would he write this extremely elaborate typewritten letter uh, claiming a co-ed murder a month after it took place, and then write the loose leaf letters? Of course, some people believe that the 2016 hoaxer wrote those letters, which also doesn't make any sense, and then wrote the death poem. I don't see that any of that makes sense, since the first three murder events that were committed in the Bay Area were all against couples. I don't understand why he would choose to claim a co-ed murder, which, as I said about the Haran hoax theory, the moment one of those murders gets solved, you've gone to all this trouble, including writing the ciphers and writing a transpositional cipher in the case of Z340 for nothing, because then you're essentially, your bluff has been called by law enforcement, and your whole shtick is out the window. So I don't understand why it would make sense to people that someone who didn't commit the Sherry Bates murder would go to the trouble, particularly of writing the confession letter, but then writing the two follow-up messages. It isn't logical within the realm of any hoaxer activity, as far as I can tell, because again, not only do you have a situation where, for example, with the loose leaf letters and the poem do not resemble the confession letter. Okay, so they're essentially, it's like with the Zodiac letters in the Bay Area. Pretty much with every single mailing, some new element was introduced. With the After the Zodiac killer sent the original cover letters for Z408, the next letter then said, "This is the Zodiac speaking." The next letter, which was the October 13th letter, then included a swatch of bloody shirt. Okay, and if you want it, the November 8th letter was a greeting card. Okay. Then the November 9th letter had a bomb diagram. Okay, so pretty much, and the Dear Melvin letter had this confessional lipstick killer angle to it. Okay, so why? I have to check and make absolutely sure I'm still. That's not going to work. Let's see. Okay, it's still. For a second there, I thought the recording shut off, as happened when Ned DeHaan were trying to do our interview last Saturday, a week ago Saturday. Okay. Um, I don't understand how that configuration is logical. Some rage-filled spurn suitor kills Cherry Bates, and then this fledgling Zodiac killer who hasn't done any, either hasn't done any killings or hasn't launched any kind of letter writing campaign, suddenly devotes this tremendous amount of energy to claim the co-ed murder. It just doesn't. I don't see how that is logical from any angle. Okay, so but anyway, the uh, one of the things I would one of the other things I would point out about the confession letter is that one of the questions about the Sherry Bates murder was it the Zodiac killer's first murder, or did he commit other murders before this? And or was it not one of his murders? And a statement in the confession letter, which is often pointed to, is where the writer says she is not the first and she will not be the last. Okay, what the Zodiac killers actually meant when they wrote that sentence was not about whether Sherry Bates was not the first victim. She was the first Zodiac killer victim. Okay, but what the killers meant when they say she is not the first and she will not be the last, they meant Sherry Bates was not the first co-ed to be murdered on a campus, and she wasn't going to be the last. There were going to be more co-eds in the future who were going to be murdered on campus. Okay, so it's a kind of it's essentially saying that the Zodiacs weren't doing anything wrong by using Sherry Bates as one of their victims for the Zodiac project, because co-ed murders happen all the time. Okay, so anyway, the other odd thing about the confession, well, there are many odd things about it. It was typed. It was sent to the. I'll make that point later. I want to show you something else. The very first thing that you see from the Zodiac killers is the title of the confession letter, which is the confession. Okay, and I'm going to do a translation of those words here. It's here it is. Okay. It's these 5 letters. It's at the heading of the confession letter, the confession by, and then there's a blank line, but it's THECO. When you convert those 5 letters to Morse code, I'm going to use digital Morse code because it's a little bit easier to read. Digital Morse code is 1 for dash and a 0 for dot. Okay, but I could write it as straight Morse code as dots and dashes if I wanted to. It's just it reads a little bit better if you use the digits. And the advantage of using ones and zeros binary system is that you can then convert words into binary numbers. Okay, but I'm not doing that in this case. All I'm doing is I'm converting letters into the same sequence and redividing the words, okay, to create a message. Okay, so what you get here with this is you get this. And again, all I've done here is I have changed dashes to ones and dots to zeros. Okay, but it doesn't. It's a middle quantity. I could have presented it as dots and dashes. Doesn't matter. Okay, it reads a little bit easier if you do it like this. So I'm using the digits. THECO converts to 10001000101011, okay, or dot or dash dot 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 dash dot dash dot dash dash dash, okay, if you want to look at it that way. Okay, so that's what we have. This is the first sequence from the Zodiac Killer. Okay, and now we are going to use the same sequence of dots and dashes, same sequence of ones and zeros, divided differently. So what we're going to do is convert this to this. Okay, notice that this is the same sequence of dots and dashes. It's 1 followed by 4 zeros, 1 followed by, wait a minute, 1 followed by 5 zeros, then 1 0 1 0, and then 1 by 1. Do I have an extra? Did I put an extra? Yeah, I put an extra. Sorry, I put an extra 1 there, so I'm gonna take that off. Okay, so this is what it is. It's the same sequence of numbers or dots and dashes, if you want to look at that. 1 followed by 5 zeros, or a dash followed by 5 dots, then a 1 0 1 0 1 1 1. Okay, but they're divided differently. And if you convert these now to letters in Morse code, this is B, this is E, this is R, this is T, this is A, and this is M. Okay, so in other words, the first 5 letters that in a Zodiac communication, the confession letter, THECO, converts directly to redivided Morse code to Berta M. Okay, I said that Berta Margulies was the author. She was the person who thought up the Zodiac project. And here, the first words out of the mouth of the Zodiacs, in effect, is something that converts to Berta M. In other words, her signature is at the very beginning of the project. The first written communication from the Zodiac Killers is this, and that's her signature there. Okay, so the second question that people might ask about the confession letter is why it was sent in all caps. Okay, and the confession letter is sent in all caps because it's the first thing that you hear from. It's the first thing you hear from the Zodiacs. Gareth Penn mentions in Time 17 that the Zodiac Killer, that Michael O'Hare, was using Dante's Inferno as a source. Okay, and what we see in Dante's Inferno, when the poet arrives at the gates of hell. Dante's Inferno is a poem about Dante waking up in the woods, and he meets up with the poet Virgil, and they go down and take a trip through hell. So he wakes up in a dark wood on Holy Thursday. He and Virgil enter hell on Good Friday, and they spend that basically what a weekend, just as the Zodiac attacked, only on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Um, Dante and Virgil are in hell for Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and they come up out of hell on the morning of Easter Sunday. Okay, and the first thing that they see of hell is this, which I don't think you'll be able to see on your screen, but it's the inscription, which at least in its translation of Dante's Italian is invariably given in uppercase letters. It's, in other words, it's an all caps format. Okay. So the way this reads is, in this particular translation, and again, this is what's written on the gates of hell in Dante's poem. Through me the way into the suffering city, through me the way to the eternal pain, through me the way that runs among the lost. Justice urged on my high artificer, my maker was divine authority, the highest wisdom and primal love. Before me nothing but eternal things were made, and I endure eternally. Abandon every hope who enter here. Okay? So this is a message on the gates of hell, and it's in an all caps format. Okay? So what is the format of the confession letter? It's in all caps. Okay? And it's the reason it's in all caps is to evoke Dante's Inferno as a source, and essentially to say, this is your first message from hell. And where have we seen this before, by the way? Well, we've seen it in, there is a letter that has been ascribed to Jack the Ripper. I don't think the actual Jack the Ripper wrote the letter, but the return address on it was, back in 1888, was from hell. Okay. In fact, there's a movie about Jack the Ripper, which is called From Hell. Okay. And this is basically the same idea. So they get, the Zodiac killers get several influences in here, just with one thing, with the confession letter, which is they get to claim Dante's Inferno as a source, and also harken back to Jack the Ripper. So I said before that what you see, and other people have I'm not the first person to have commented on this necessarily, but other people have commented on the fact that if you look at all the Zodiac letters, and even just some of the crimes, Lake Berryessa is kind of a copy of Domingo's Edwards, the tying up of the victims and so forth. That this is a constant theme in for the Zodiac killers, and in the Zodiac murders and in the letters, which is, you see references to, in this case, to classical literature from the Renaissance, but also to other crimes. Okay, in this case, the Jack the Ripper murders. Okay, so this is part of what the Zodiac killers were doing with the confession letter, which is, and again, I assume, because in the confession letter, the Riverside PD assumed that the confession letter was written by Sherry Bates's murderer. And I assume that part of the reason for that is that in the letter, the writer says, yes, I did make that call to you also. So apparently there was some sort of phone calls similar to the ones that were made in the Bay Area that in all the years since the Bates murder has not come to light. Nobody, and Ken Maines, who has supposedly shown everything pertaining to the Sherry Bates murder. And that's why he says, I don't think there's anything that Riverside PD is holding back, because I think I saw everything that they had. I don't, maybe I'm wrong about this. I don't recall Ken saying anything about the phone call, but presumably Sherry's killer made a phone call to the police, and that's what he was talking about. That was what was being talked about in the confession letter. Okay, here's some follow up on this. I'm not. I've already talked about ad nauseum about the 2016 hoaxer claiming that he wrote the loose leaf letters. And as I've already pointed out, the fact that Joseph Bates and Sherry Josephine Bates both had the name Joseph Bates inside their names. Joseph Bates, her dad had the same name as the founder of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, or one of the founders of that church. Okay, so I've talked about that already. I've talked about the fact that if you look at the three loose leaf letters, somehow the hoaxing teenager knew that some killer with the letter Z at the beginning of his name would end up being associated with the Bates murder. In the event, we're talking about the Zodiac killer, because there are two letter Z's. Two of the three letters that were sent contained what appears to be the letter Z as a signature. Okay, what I find to be, if anything, more convincing is the fact that all three of those letters were double posted. And as I've said, having been a very productive, if I say it myself, letter carrier and postal worker, a sorter of letters for 37 years, and I was the number one employee in percent to standard for the last, how long was it? At least the last 18 years of my career in my own postal facility. So I handled more letters than anybody did. And having said all that, as I said, for every letter that I can ever recall having too much postage on it, there had to have been at least 1,000 letters, maybe 10,000 letters, maybe 100,000 letters that didn't have enough postage on there. I find the double posting on the loose leaf letters to be very convincing, and they were double posted pretty much exactly the way the Bay area letters were. I want to talk about the desk poem, and if I can ever get this thing off. This is turning into a problem here. Let me. Come on. There we go. Okay. This gets into some significant detail here, so you will have to bear with me as I try to transcribe parts of Dante's Inferno. How many serial killers do things like this? I think there's really only one that you can point to. Maybe Ted Kaczynski made references to classical literature. I don't know, or Renaissance literature. Anyway, the opening quatrain of Dante's Inferno, it's very famous. It's one of the most famous paragraphs in all of literature. It goes midway in, and there are various ways of translating the Italian. Okay. This is this is this happens on Holy Thursday, which, if I'm not mistaken, the actual timing of the poem, it's in the year 1300, which is not the first year of the 14th century. It's actually the last year of the 13th century. Just as 2000 was the last year of the 20th century, the first year of the 21st century was 2001. Okay, the beginning of any century, the number of the year has to end in a one. The last year of any century, the year has to end in a zero. Okay, and I think would have to actually end in it. Yeah, would have to end it like in double zeros. Okay, so the year 1300 was actually the last year of the 13th century, not the first year of the 14th century. Um, so when Dante starts writing his poem, and when he wakes up in the dark wood, he's awoke to find myself alone in the dark wood. Okay. Dante's Inferno has been called a poem about a midlife crisis. Okay. Let me put this down for a second and use this thing over here. Dante was born in the year 1265. I think he died in the year 1322. But the events of the poem take place in the year 1300. Okay, and his life expectancy would have been from 1265 to, I want to say 1320. Well, I guess it was 1335. Okay. Okay, so Dante Alighieri was born in 1265, died, I believe, in 1322, maybe 1321. It's not that significant, but you can find out on Wikipedia. 13, well, look it up. What the hell? And the events of the poem take place in 1300. So, let's do Dante. Here it is. Okay. September 14th, 1321, actually. Okay. He was born circa 1265. He died on the 14th of September, 1321. So I will fix that. And so the events of Dante's Inferno take place in the year 1300. And the poem begins on Holy Thursday, which I believe in the poem is April 7th, 1300. And then he's alone in the dark wood on Holy Thursday evening. And then he and the poet Virgil enter, Roman poet Virgil enter hell on Good Friday, and then they come up out of hell they spend the weekend there. Remember, the Zodiac only killed on weekends, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And they come up out of hell on Sunday morning. The biblical span of life, your life expectancy, according to the Bible, was 70. In other words, 70 years. So ordinarily, Dante would have, he was born in 1265, he would have expected to die in 1335. 70 years, okay? So, I'm playing with house money, by the way. But anyway, the idea being that in 1300, he was midway through his life. Okay? So, where have we heard that theme before, by the way? Who else was midway through his life when he did something? Okay, so here is the quote from Dante's Inferno. Okay? Midway, and this is, you see like varying translations, but this is basically the way it goes. Translations from the Italian. This is the first quatrain from Dante's Inferno. Midway in my life's journey, I strayed from the straight path and awoke to find myself alone in a dark wood. Okay? And it's been quoted all over the place in other works of literature, and it's, as I said, that is one of the most famous passages in all of world literature. Okay? And again, Dante's Inferno has been called, what he's talking about here is a kind of spiritual, he's undergoing a kind of spiritual crisis. And Dante's Inferno has been called a poem about a midlife crisis. Okay? So it's midway in my life's journey and so forth. Okay? So what do we see in Riverside? Here's what we see. What do we see in the opening quatrain of another poem? We see this. These are the first 4 lines of the death poem. Cut, clean, if read, clean. Okay? Now, I put it to you that these two things, the opening quatrain from Dante's Inferno and the first 4 lines of the Riverside death poem, are saying the same thing. Okay? Let me see if I can get there we go. Okay. What you're getting in the opening quatrain of Dante's Inferno is the poet is telling you that the journey through hell is cutting his life in half. Okay? What the author of the Riverside death poem is telling you is exactly the same thing. The murder of Cherry Bates is cutting his life in half. Cut clean, if read clean. I will make that a little bit darker so it's if possible. Yeah, okay, that's almost too dark. So, but anyway. That's what the idea is, okay? In other words, the death poem, at least the first 4 lines of the death poem, are a paraphrase of the opening quatrain of Dante's Inferno, okay? And how is this possible, you ask? Let me give you an example of this sort of thing, okay? If I say to you, 87 years before today, my ancestors came to America to establish an egalitarian society. What did I just tell you? Okay? This is a quiz. Okay, you can play along if you want. You can stop the video and think about this for a second, or I will repeat what I just said. and see if you can solve this little puzzle, okay, if you haven't heard it before. Um, let's do it again, okay? Listen carefully. 87 years before today, my ancestors arrived in America to establish an egalitarian society. Okay? Again, if you want, you can stop the video and see if you can figure out what I just told you. Okay. Okay, what did I just tell you? Here's what I just told you. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on America a new continent, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Okay? Those two statements are identical. They both say the same thing. Okay? The reason that you don't immediately recognize the first version I gave you is that I changed the words. Okay, it's the opening of it's the Gettysburg Address, right? I don't know. My brain's. I think it's yeah, it's Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. You can disguise a familiar passage in literature by changing the words, okay? And by paraphrasing and using different words. So what we which is what I did with the Gettysburg Address. Now, what we have here in the Riverside poem is the same thing that we have in Dante's Inferno. This poem, Dante's Inferno, this trip through hell, is cutting my life in half. Midway in my life's journey, at the age of 35, and I will presumably live to be 70, although that turned out not to happen in Dante's case. I strayed from the straight path. He's having like a spiritual crisis, okay? And the Zodiac is saying the same thing in Riverside in the death poem. Cut, clean. If read, clean. In other words, if this is read properly, you will see that I am cutting my life in half by committing this murder. And by the way, why does he use the word clean twice? It's because, let's do it again. The word clean translates in alphabet numbers to 35. It's the third letter C, the 12th letter L, the fifth letter E, the first letter A, the 14th letter N. So it's 3 plus 12, which is 15, plus 5, which is 20, 21, 35. And he's got two 35s. So it's the same idea as in Dante's quatrain. I'm 35 years old. I expect to live to be 70, which is the biblical span of life. Okay? And so that this poem, this trip through hell, is happening midway through my life. Okay? Same thing going on with the Zodiac in Riverside. Cut clean. If this is read properly, if this is read the way I intended for it to be read, with clean illustrating the link to Dante, 35, two cleans add up to 70. That's what this is. That's what it means. Okay? And what this passage, why would the Zodiac killers be so intent on presenting this particular passage and paraphrasing it and presenting it to the world, is my question. Well, here's the thing you might want to think about. if I were going to give you a clue as to my identity, if I were a secret killer and you didn't know who I was, but I was going to give you a clue as to my identity, what would be the most efficient way of doing that? The most efficient way of doing that would be to do it in the first word. Okay? The single most efficient way you could do that is if you did it in the very first word. Okay? Does the word midway somehow reveal who the Zodiac killer is, or who one of the Zodiac killer trigger man is? And let me see what I want to take here. Yeah, well, we'll use this one for now, and then maybe I'll come back to the other thing. I showed you the Berta M thing already. That's still on here, so. The first word in that passage from Dante is midway. Okay. So again, it's about a midway. It's about a midlife crisis. The interesting thing about the word midway is that it also refers to one of the great naval battles of all time, which was Midway, and it took place in June of 1942. And the Battle of Midway is very significant if you're interested in the Zodiac killer, because Midway was a battle which was largely decided by cryptography. The Americans had solved JN-25, which was the Japanese naval code. So they were actually able to anticipate the Japanese invasion of Midway. And the Japanese should have had no trouble at all with their fleet, which was massive, and they had multiple. They had 4 carriers, and they had so many carriers they didn't know what to do with them. And the Americans had already had much of its navy destroyed in Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. The Americans basically had 3 carriers, one of which was limping a little bit. They had Task Force 16, Task Force 17. It's a great story. It's one of the great, not just naval victories, but one of the great victorious battles in history. It's probably the greatest victory any American military ever won. Midway. It was a phenomenal victory. And it was won through cryptography, basically. It's because they knew what the Japanese were going to do. Okay? They knew where the Japanese were going before they got there. Okay? And I could go into the details of that, but that's some research that you might want to do. It's a very interesting story. Anyway, what other significance does Midway have? Okay, well, it's a reference to cryptography, but it's also a reference to a place in Chicago, because the busiest airport in the world up until 1962 was Midway Airport, okay? And I better check my sources before I go any further, because I'm going to get into trouble here. Let's do Midway Airport. Okay. International Airport in Chicago. Major crew established in 1927. Midway served as Chicago's primary airport. Until 1944. Let's go back and okay. Designed to be okay. Okay, so from I would say from until about the Midway was the world's busiest airport until the early 60s, although the airport that replaced Midway was, I think, its predecessor was in place by the 1940s, but its successor eventually became the busiest airport in the world. Midway Airport in Chicago was replaced by O'Hare. Okay, so if you're if you're looking to quote a a a famous poem, a classical poem, and the first word of that poem, which in the case of Dante's Inferno is Midway, O'Hare is a synonym for Midway. Okay, O'Hare is another way of O'Hare replaced Midway as the world's busiest airport. In that sense, O'Hare is a synonym. O'Hare and Midway are synonyms. They both essentially stand for the same thing. Okay? So by using Dante's Inferno, the Zodiac killers were providing a clue as to who the trigger man was in the Zodiac killer murders, and they were providing a clue as to who actually killed Sherry Bates. Okay, it was O'Hare. Okay, so the literature in or messages, however you want to call them, in Riverside contains significant information about and there are other reasons that the Zodiac killers wanted to evoke Dante's Inferno, but I just showed you a couple of them. The You had in Riverside, you had the confession letter, which was mailed. I want to say November 29th, 1966. So it was mailed not quite a month after the murder of Sherry Bates. The three loose leaf letters were mailed that were all postmarked April 30th, 1967. Again, they were not mailed by the 2016 hoaxer. Okay, in fact they were mailed by Zodiac killer personnel. And then you had, I guess, maybe in between those two communications, you had the desk poem. Okay, and again, the point to be made, particularly with the desk poem, is the same one that I talked about in the last episode, which is the Sherry Bates murder divides Michael O'Hare's life in half at 23 years. It's not. Dante's life was figuratively divided in half by the poem, and Michael O'Hare's life was divided in half by the idea that he would be 23 years old when he murdered Sherry Bates, and he would be 46 years old when the Terminus event happened. And uh, so that was the general idea of what he was doing, of what they were doing, some of the things that they were doing with the Riverside letters and the Riverside poem. Now, I will mention a couple of other things here, which are have been pointed out actually. Um, I thought I had mentioned this in one of my books. Apparently, I didn't. And then Tom Voigt noticed it, and he mentioned it. Um, so I could have sworn that I pointed it out, but apparently Tom gets. It's kind of like when two scientists are working on the same problem, and one of them just gets his patent application in sooner than the other guy is, and he ends up being a billionaire. And although I don't think Tom's a billionaire, um, the two of the three loose leaf letters appear to have been signed with a Z. And in point of fact, the Edwin Baird short story that I talked about in the last episode, which is from 1921. I forgot to mention that. It's from 1921. So it significantly predates anything that the Zodiac killers were doing. But two of the three April 30th, 1967 loose leaf letters appear to have been signed with the letter Z. Okay. The desk poem was signed with two letters RH. Okay. And they are presumably coming from the same person. Okay. So the question then becomes, and as I said, Tom beat me to this one, although I think we both solved it independently. In what sense, if these are the same people, then in what sense does Z equal RH? Okay. And the obvious answer to that is that Z is the 26th letter of the alphabet, R is the 18th letter, and H is the eighth letter. Excuse me. Mess that one up. Let's try this again. Okay. So it looks like this. Z equals RH. Z is the 26th letter, R is the 18th letter, H is the 8th letter. So 26 equals 18 plus 8. Okay. What does this mean? Well, obviously it means that the Zodiac killers are using alphabet numbers as part of their coding system. Okay, so it's not anything. It's not rocket science. Alphabet numbers are alphabet numbers are A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, D equals 4, and so forth. Okay, so I am now going to show you something that's a little bit more. Let me see if I can do this. All right, maybe I'll go with this. Do I want to go with the big? Let me see here. How are we on time? That's the question. I don't want to. I know I don't want to go. Oh, okay. We're about an hour into it. Okay. The longer your video is, the longer it takes to upload, and you get like into the range of like 3-hour videos. Look out. It just takes forever. Okay. But I want to make a point here about this is like a bonus coverage here for No, I guess I can do that. Okay, we'll do it that way. Instead of using this, I'm going to use these two and see if that works better. Okay, anyway, you got the point of Midway and O'Hare, right? Those are synonyms. Let's go with something that people on Zodiac Killer message boards never talk about, although it to me it seems like so blatantly obvious. I don't understand why it hasn't been noticed by people. But the Zodiac Killer used a different gun. Each place, and even in Lake Berryessa, each place where he used a gun, he used a different gun caliber. And what you see on Zodiac Killer message boards is you see people saying things like, well, obviously he just got rid of the gun so that he wouldn't get caught, on his way, what does that mean exactly? Did he throw it in the trash somewhere? I mean, the zebra murders in San Francisco were solved because even though different perpetrators were using the gun, they were all using the same gun, okay? I don't find it very convincing that, Son of Sam, David Berkowitz, kept using a 44, okay? Most of the time, these guys just keep using the same gun over and over again, or the same weapon over and over again, okay? So why would he change, okay? And again, I'm going to cause all kinds of turmoil and mayhem by talking about this, but I'll do it anyway. I don't care. At Lake Herman Road, the Zodiac Killer used a 22. Okay. At Blue Rock Springs Park, he used a 9mm. Okay. At Lake Berryessa, he appears to have shown Brian Hartnell a 45. Now, granted, he never actually shot the couple with the gun, but he did use it on them because using the gun got them to submit to being tied up and so forth. And Brian Hartnell says that he thought that the gun was a 45. So I'm going to go with that. Okay? If you don't like it, I'm sorry. Again, as I've said multiple times, and I will say it again, the gun that was used in Presidio Heights was a 38. Okay? It was not a 9mm. If you go and you look at the original newspaper account on, I guess San Francisco Chronicle Sunday, October 12th, it says that the cab driver was shot. No, they misspell his name, yes, but it says the cab driver was shot with a 38. What does that mean? It means that some police spokesman or police captain or police lieutenant was giving information or giving a press release to a beat reporter, and he said that the gun was a 38, okay? Now, when was the gun typing changed to a 9mm? That happened after it was learned that the Zodiac Killer was the author of the Paul Stein murder, okay? Now, I'm not accusing anybody of anything here, but they knew that the last gun that the Zodiac Killer used was a 9mm, okay? And if I'm not mistaken, now I've been correct. I think Brian Pettengill has given me some good information about this, about what type of bullet is used. If I'm not mistaken, a 38 uses 9mm bullets. Maybe that's where the confusion came in. At any rate, the original typing of the gun, and we know this because it's there in the newsprint, and there would not have been any reason for the beat reporter just to make up a number, okay? The original typing of the gun was a 38, okay? And we know that in the Mount Diablo letter, possibly because the gun typing was excuse me, let me do this properly here, was corrected to a 9mm, that the writer of the Mount Diablo letter then said, I got even with them in a different way. I shot a man sitting in a parked car with a 38. What he was not talking about Richard Raditich. What he was saying was he was correcting the gun number, which had been apparently corrected by the police, so that they changed it from 38 to 9, and he was correcting it back to a 38. And according to Gareth Penn, he had said to Paul Avery that, of course he knew better, but he had said to Paul Avery that Paul Stine had been shot by a 9mm. And Paul Avery stood up and said, no, it was Paul Stine was shot with a 38. Okay? So there are multiple sources for believing that the gun that shot Paul Stine was actually a 38. And that's what I believe it was. Okay? Now, Mike Butterfield is probably already jumping up and down and sweat's pouring out of his brow over this, okay? But as I have reasons for believe everything that I do believe, and those are my reasons for, and also because that's what Gareth Penn says, and I believe Gareth Penn to be a conspirator in the Zodiac crime. So, the gun sequence of the Zodiac killer was 22, 9, 45, 38. Okay? Now, here's the question. How much of a jump in logic is it? How much of a leap of faith is it to assume that somebody who is sending ciphers to, to the newspapers, and someone who really does not have, if you want to look, why send crime details to the newspapers about, this crime is connected to this crime is connected to this crime, and so forth, when you don't need to do any of that? All you have to do is just do what the zebra killers did and just use the same gun each time. But they don't do that. They use a different gun. So how much of a leap is it to assume that for people who were sending ciphers to the newspapers and who appeared to be creating some sort of puzzle with the Zodiac project, that the gun sequence itself would be a puzzle? Okay, is that a huge leap of logic, or does it make sense? Okay, I believe that this is the correct sequence: 22, 9, 45, 38. Okay, so let's take a look at those numbers on. Okay, I'll use this thing here. All right. I know I'm going to regret this, but I'll do it anyway. Why not? Okay. I'll tell you what, since we already know what 1 through 26 is, right? I mean, I can, without any trouble, I can tell you what each of those numbers, I can, the fourth letter is D, the 12th letter is L, the 15th letter is O, the 23rd letter is W, and so forth, okay? So I'm going to start with 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. Okay? So these are the numbers Come on. Okay. These are the numbers that we have. Okay, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. That should cover everything that we need. So, let's start with alphabet numbers, okay? So I can already tell you the 22nd letter of the alphabet is V. The 9th letter of the alphabet is I. So now let's go to our grid here, and we're going to continue with letters of the alphabet starting with 27, okay? So it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S. Okay? So this is what we have. And we're going by alphabet numbers. Okay? So we had the sequence was 29, 22, 9, 45, 38. So number 45 is S, and number 38 is L. Okay? So let's add those letters. 45 is S, and 38 is L. So what we have is VISL. Okay? So here's the question. Was Elvis Presley the Zodiac killer? I've been suggesting that the Zodiac killer was high class, but maybe that was just a lie. I don't think so. I don't think this is right. Okay, so let's try something else. First, let's get rid of the letters that we looked up, and we're going to make a very slight change. I'm going to pretend I'm Dave Aranchek, and I'm going to go with a slightly different scheme of AZ decrypt using slightly different values. So what I'm going to do now is flip the alphabet. And I'm going to start with, if the easiest way of using alphabet numbers is A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, D equals 4, and so forth, then it seems to me the second easiest way of doing that would be to flip the alphabet and start and work backwards. So, in other words, we would go with 27 would be Z, 28 would be Y, 29 would be X, 30 would be W, 31 would be V, 32 would be U, 33 would be T, 34 would be S, 35 Q, R, okay, R would be 35, and Q would be 36. Let's see, M, N, O, P. So P would be 37. Q, P, M, N, O. O would be 38. 39 would be N. 40 would be M. Let's see, how's it go? H, I, J, K, L. So L would be 41. K would be 42. J would be 43. I would be 44, and H would be 45, okay? So, let's go with the backward alphabet, and apply them to those numbers. So the first 26 shouldn't be that hard. So if V is the 22nd letter of the alphabet, and we're running the alphabet backwards, then it should be, all you have to do is subtract the whatever the number is from 27. So 27 minus 22 is 5. So the fifth letter is E. Okay. 9 from 27 is 18. So the 18th letter is R. So we know the first two letters are ER. How about the third letter for 45 and 38? It would be what do we have here? Let's see. 30 no. So it's it's 30 38 and then 45, okay? So 45 is H and 38 is O. Okay? This is 38, that's O. So it's H O. Using a backward alphabet. So what we have here is the 45 converts to H and the 38 converts to O, okay? So the sequence is E, R, H, O, okay? Does that look like somebody's name? Does it look like somebody's name spelled backwards? Okay? Let's take a close look at this. If we have if the actual sequence of the gun numbers is ERHO, what that looks like is Michael O'Hare's last name spelled backwards, okay? But if that's the case, why did they remove the A from the middle of his name, okay? And the reason for it is that when you remove the central A, what you have is the first two letters, E and R, and then the last two letters, H and O. And what you have then is the fifth letter plus the 18th letter. And over here you have the 8th letter plus the 15th letter. So what you end up with the sequence is using all I used here is a backward alphabet applied to the gun numbers in the Zodiac sequence 22, 9, 45, 38. Okay? I can back up the use of each of those numbers logically. So the sequence using a backward alphabet is ERHO. It's O'Hare spelled backwards. Okay? Why did they take out the central A? It's because the first two letters, ER, E is the fifth letter, R is the 18th letter. That adds up to 23. H is the 8th letter. O is the 15th letter. That also adds up to 23. So by removing the central A, what you get is our old friend here, 223. Okay? So that's the logic. Now, Dave Aranchek has an expression that he likes to use, which is coincidences are fun to find, okay? This is a very straightforward conversion, okay? And again, it is based upon what I consider to be the best evidence as far as the gun numbers go. So it is logical to me that the Zodiac killers changed the gun numbers in order to create a, a sequence of letters that convert to the main killer's name spelled backwards and with the central A removed so that it gives you the sequence 223. Okay? So, anyway, that's kind of like I'm trying to think of anything else I need to talk about in Riverside here. That's not, obviously, that's not pertaining to Riverside, but what's nice about that is since I was talking about 223s in my last video, essentially what you end up with the gun sequence is 223. Okay, so the idea being that, and I will show you, I can do that. I can basically do this kind of thing all day long, and I can show you how pretty much everything that they were doing comes back to these two or three themes that they keep harping on over and over again. And the purpose of doing this is that at the end of the previous video, I was talking about how well, let's see if I can do this here. Okay. Well, we'll do it upside down. Let's try it that way. The placing, the reason that they abducted Cherry Bates and they held her for 4 hours and then they brought her back to a specific point on planet Earth, which was which was longitude meridian excuse me, meridian 117 degrees and 23 minutes, and parallel 33 to northwest 117 degrees 23 minutes. That's Riverside. It's the alley. It was the alley to the west of the Quad building on the RCC campus in Riverside. West 117 degrees 23 minutes. North 33 degrees 58 minutes. This is a meridian. This is a parallel. Okay. And what the idea was that this was the crossroads of Michael O'Hare's life. It's where he was 23 years old. He was going to commit his first murder, commit the murder that cut his life in half. Cut clean, if read clean. Okay, and the purpose of doing this, part of the purpose of doing it is, I was talking about a puzzle before. What this isn't just a puzzle, okay? It's also it's an insight into human life, okay? Just as the 2323 is in effect, it's a statement made. It's an art. If you want to look at it this way, I wouldn't call it a manifesto, but it's an artistic insight into life, which is life consists of 223s, okay, and it's just another way of looking at the blueprint of demonstrating the blueprint of life, what life is, and how it pertains to other aspects of life, such as your length of life. And the Zodiac killers were not the first people to do this, because again, we were just talking about Dante. Dante said at the very beginning of his poem that he was midway in his life. And the reason he said that was in the year 1300, he was 35 years old, and the Bible's span of life, I would don't think it was the average lifespan, but a full life as talked about in the Bible was 70 years, okay, which is 70 years, okay. So that's what Dante was talking about. So the Zodiac killers essentially are talking about this sort of thing. They were talking about making insights into what happens to people when they commit their first murder. And in society, when you commit a murder, if I run into somebody and I'm talking to them about my background and I say something like, "Yeah, I killed a man 10 years." There's a song in I believe in South Pacific that a friend of mine used to do like an impression of, where the hero says, "I have something to tell you. I have killed a man, but it is not to my discredit." Okay, he was a bully. Okay, so I killed him. Okay, and then he sings "Some Enchanted Evening," but the idea being that being a killer sets you apart. It puts you in a different category from the rest of the human race because most people presumably have not killed. So if you are a killer, that sets you apart and you become something different. And this is particularly true, obviously, if you become celebrated enough for killing people that you actually have a nickname where you're called the Zodiac Killer, or you're called Jack the Ripper, or you're called the Lipstick Killer, or you're called the Green River Killer, or you're called Son of Sam, okay? Or you're called the BTK Killer, or you're called the Golden State Killer, okay? And again, I assume that when Joseph James D'Angelo committed his first murder, at that point he became GSK. Same thing with Dennis Rader when he killed the Oteros. I believe that was his first murder scene. He became BTK in effect. Um, Michael O'Hare became the Zodiac, okay, at that point, and that was the point of the murder. It was part of the point of the murder. They were part of the reason that they killed Cherry Bates was to make that point and to demonstrate that insight. Okay. Now, if you're asking me, I don't think it is worth killing another human being to make that insight. Okay. It's one of the reasons I did my best to prevent the Terminus event from happening, and I was very successful. And by the way, none of you would be watching this if I hadn't done that. Okay, there's a there's a scene in my novel where the Ray Grant character is talking to the Michael O'Hare character in Michael O'Hare's office in the Goldman School, which at least was, I think, room 112. I don't know if if that's still his office address. Okay, but one of the things that our two characters say that the Michael O'Hare character says to the Ray Grant character is, um, don't feel bad about all of those people who are calling you names on Zodiac Killer message boards because you invented all of those people. Okay, which is if you believe what I'm saying, that's true because by preventing if the Terminus event had happened, there wouldn't be message boards about the Zodiac Killer. At least I don't think there would be. I don't think there are message boards about Jack the Ripper, but he was never caught. Okay, but are there message boards about the Golden State Killer? There's the subreddit about serial killers, but I don't think you would have if the Terminus event had happened, I don't think you would have message boards about the Zodiac killer. And one of the reasons I think that wouldn't happen is that the Zodiac project was an intellectual puzzle, and most of the anonymous posters on Zodiac killer message boards aren't exactly intellectuals. Okay, so I don't, and not only that, but they take it as an affront when you suggest that the that what the Zodiac killer was doing was intellectual, and that the Zodiac killer was very bright. Okay, there's tremendous resistance to that, but the fact is, one of the things that Dave Ranchek did when he solved the cipher of Z340 is underscore that whoever wrote that cipher had to be a bright person, because you wouldn't have not only known the transposition schemes and been familiar with things like the Army code manuals, but also be bright to the extent that you were manipulating the transposition schemes in ways that as Dave has pointed out, are very puzzling. In other words, even after you have figured out what Z340 says, you still haven't figured out why the person who made the cipher was doing things like moving symbols around and creating, as I said before, creating, I think, 26 examples in the cipher where the width of the cipher goes by without the repeating of a symbol. Okay, that had to be done on purpose. So why did he do it? And it had to be done by someone who is very interested in the nuts and bolts of cipher construction. The Z408 could have been constructed by someone who is just doing cryptography as a hobby. I don't think that's true of Z340. Whoever constructed Z340 was a very serious devotee of cryptography. Okay, in my opinion. Maybe, but whether he was or not, I guarantee you he was not some drooling guy who was like running around and could barely get himself across the street. And, as I had a poster tell me one time, I don't think he was so bright, Well, I certainly think whoever he was well above average, because that's what the cipher construction tells me. He was someone who is interested in the manipulation of symbols such that, in effect, he was speaking to other cryptographers, okay, by creating effects within the cipher. And I think to do that, you would have to be a very bright person, okay? Anyway, I'm trying to think. Does that pretty much cover what happened in? I mean, there are things in. Let me check my time here for just a second. That's okay. It's about an hour and a half. Just to point out like a couple things, like really quickly here. There are things in the confession letter that don't make any sense. Okay, if you read the confession letter, the killer the writer at one point says, when we were away from the car when we were away from the car walking and talking about presumably walking back to wherever the killer's car was. Now, I talked to an administrator back in 1990 at the school who told me that there was a parking lot down below the alley where Sherry was killed, and that the alley was in effect a shortcut to that, maybe on Fairfax Street. I don't know where the parking lot was, but the alley was, for all intents and purposes, a passageway to that lower alley. wouldn't uh, Sherry Bates have asked herself, what is this guy doing at my car if his own car was like around the corner? Okay, what reason would he have had to to go to where my car was? That doesn't. I mean, of all the things that don't make sense about her being out in front of the library for an hour and a half and no one noticing except her killer that she was trying to start a car. That doesn't make any sense. The 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 idea that Sherry would have gone with the guy instead of just walking over to a payphone and calling her dad. The fact that she would leave her car with the key still in the ignition, and that the wording of the confession letter is such that it wouldn't have made sense to her that this guy came up and was helping her. Why was he at her car in the first place? Wouldn't he have just like ducked around the corner of the quad building and gone down that alley to the lower parking lot? That doesn't make any sense. But none of that fits the evidence anyway, so I'm not even sure why I'm talking about it. Anyway, um, so I'm at okay. I'm a little bit less than an hour and 40 minutes, so that should be enough. Maybe the upload isn't going to take forever this time. That pretty much covers what if I think of other things to talk about as far as the Riverside messages, maybe I'll do them in the next video, which I might do. As I said, I'm doing a lot. I'm driving out to the airport tomorrow morning, so I'm not sure when I'll do my next video, but I want to keep doing videos at least until my voice like completely goes. As long as I can still be heard, I figure I might as well keep going, and people want to see more videos, so I'm happy to provide them. Any problems with anything I say? If there's something that you disagree with, I have people saying, "Well, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I also disagree with some things." Comment down below, tell me what you don't agree with, and maybe I will address those points. Or are you just telling me, well, I'm disturbed by some of the things that you're telling me, but I don't want to change my opinion, okay? Because I think that's basically what happens on Zodiac Killer message boards. I think primarily what you're dealing with is people who have already made their minds up what they think about the case, and I'm not going to change their minds, and neither is anybody else. Okay, so I'm not sure exactly why I'm doing this, but I think the answer to that is Ned asked me. Okay, and by the way, I was surprised, but somewhat happy to see that the Zodiac Killer channel people of I already explained that I made a couple donations, significant donations to the Zodiac Killer channel, so that they would put up the videos that they hadn't uploaded in the last year or so. I was under the impression that one of the videos was an interview of Ned DeHaan by Richard Grinnell, and that the other one was, I was under the impression that the other one was some sort of debate, or was like some sort of roundtable discussion of the Zodiac Killer. And when I looked at it just before I did this video, what it actually was is Druser, who is apparently considered a Zodiac Killer expert, which is, well, I mean, if they have Mark Hewitt, they might as well invite everybody, right? So, but anyway, that sort of surprised me. Maybe Druser would like to to come on Ned's channel. I will be doing two more. I will be doing. Let me double check this again. That's okay. I will be doing at least two more videos with Ned. I believe on we may well depending on what he's available for. We may record videos on Thanksgiving because I'm vegetarian, so I don't eat any turkey or any of the fixings or anything like that. So I'm completely available on Thanksgiving Day. So if he's and I don't think they celebrate Thanksgiving in the Philippines. So I will be available if Ned's available on Thanksgiving, and we're going to do I believe we're going to do one episode on Joan Webster and maybe another separate talk on Ted Bundy. So you can, but I don't know when he's going to upload them. I mean, we can the the original recording for our interview, which was put out this past Friday, the 17th, was done on November 6th. So there was a layover of 11 days. So I don't know when I know he's got a lot of videos to put up. So I don't know how soon. And he's also going to put up other segments of the 3-hour video that we did on November 6th, of which I think the first one showed like an hour and 28 minutes. So, I guess we'll see. It's up to him how he wants. I've told him that however he wants to do it is fine by me. But I think maybe the second installment may come out tomorrow. But I guess we'll find out, and it'll be as a Zodiac Monday if it does. So let me get the insertion point here. And, oh, okay. All right, very good. And so I will be uploading this. This is probably going to take me a couple hours to do that. So this will probably appear like early Monday. And if I think of more things to talk about, I will do that maybe tomorrow or maybe on Tuesday, but as I said, I will try to put out as many videos as possible until my voice disappears. So yeah, in the meantime, I want to thank everybody for sticking with the videos and watching them. I know that they're too long. I will try to make them a little bit more compact and maybe not ramble as much. But I appreciate people watching the videos, and I will, as I said, I will be trying to put out as many as I can before I lose my voice. And you can also keep a close eye on Ned's channel because I think there may be at least one more installment, maybe two installments of our original talk. So although there may be some redundancy because it's basically the same kind of walkthroughs that I was originally doing on this channel. So, and I just lost the insertion point there. Okay, there we go. Okay, so thanks again uh, for for watching and listening, and I will talk to you again soon.